I am Dr. Claire Monroe, a urologist and men's sexual health specialist. In my consultation room, I have heard every conceivable home remedy, internet hack, and desperate shortcut that men use to try and revive their failing erectile function. Most of these are completely biologically inert, useless placebo protocols that do nothing but waste time, while the underlying vascular damage gets worse. However, recently, a very specific and highly unusual morning habit has been brought to my attention by multiple patients, and the physiological reports behind it are impossible to ignore. Men in their 50s, 60s, and even 70s are taking a single, whole dried clove, dropping it into their morning black coffee, and reporting an insane, almost immediate restoration of spontaneous physical responsiveness, often within 5 to 10 minutes of their first sip. They sit in my office, bewildered, asking how a simple spice could trigger a physical reaction that months of expensive, isolated supplements failed to produce. Today, I am going to pull back the curtain on the exact, rapid-fire vascular pharmacology of this combination. I will explain the precise biochemical reaction happening in your bloodstream 5 minutes after you drink this, why it triggers such a violent physiological response, and most importantly, why relying on it as a long-term strategy is a dangerous clinical miscalculation. To understand this immediate physical reaction, we have to isolate the two interacting components, starting with the coffee itself. Most men view coffee simply as a central nervous system stimulant, a way to wake up the brain. But in the context of urology and sexual health, caffeine is actually a mild, non-selective phosphodiesterase inhibitor. This means it shares a functional biological pathway with prescription erectile dysfunction medications. When you become aroused, your body uses a chemical called cGMP to keep the smooth muscle in your pelvic region relaxed, allowing blood to flow in and create an erection. The enemy of this process is the PDE enzyme, which breaks down cGMP and kills the erection. Caffeine gently inhibits this destructive enzyme, keeping the vascular gates open just a little bit wider and a little bit longer. By itself, for a man with severe vascular decay, coffee is not enough to trigger a physical response. But it primes the environment. It acts as the biological accelerator. The truly explosive reaction happens when you introduce the clove into this primed environment. Cloves are not just a flavoring agent. They are one of the most concentrated sources of a highly active botanical compound called eugenol, alongside a massive, unparalleled concentration of dietary antioxidants. When you drop a whole clove into a hot, acidic environment like black coffee, the heat acts as an extraction solvent. It rapidly pulls the eugenol and the volatile essential oils out of the fibrous matrix of the spice and directly into the liquid. When you drink this infused coffee, you are no longer consuming a food. You are consuming a highly bioavailable, rapid-acting vascular tincture. The reason the physical reaction occurs so insanely fast, often within 5 to 10 minutes, comes down to gastric absorption. Volatile oils like eugenol do not need to wait for complex intestinal digestion. They begin absorbing directly through the mucosal lining of your stomach and enter systemic circulation almost immediately. Once in the bloodstream, the eugenol hits the delicate inner lining of your blood vessels, known as the endothelium. In men over 50 suffering from erectile decline, this endothelium is usually paralyzed by severe oxidative stress, unable to produce the nitric oxide gas required to trigger an erection. The eugenol acts as a massive, localized antioxidant bomb. It aggressively neutralizes the reactive oxygen species that are suffocating your blood vessels, effectively taking the chemical brakes off your vascular system. This is the exact moment the insane physical response occurs. The eugenol instantly cleans up the oxidative damage and forces the endothelial cells to dump a surge of nitric oxide into the pelvic region. Simultaneously, the caffeine from the coffee is already in the system, blocking the enzymes that would normally shut this reaction down. You have the eugenol acting as the ultimate biological trigger. and the caffeine keeping the vascular window locked open. The result is a sudden, profound rush of oxygenated blood into the smooth muscle of the erectile tissue, often resulting in a rigid, spontaneous physical response while a man is simply sitting at his breakfast table. It is a fascinating demonstration of rapid botanical pharmacology. However, here is the unvarnished, critical medical truth that you must understand. This reaction, while impressive, is a physiological party trick. It is a temporary, forced biochemical spike, not a true clinical rehabilitation. If you have been struggling with a numb libido, a lack of morning firmness, an unreliable performance, and you are using a clove in your coffee to force a reaction, you are simply masking the underlying decay of your cardiovascular system. The eugenol and caffeine are forcing your damaged blood vessels to perform under pressure, but they are not repairing the structural integrity of the endothelium. Relying on this morning hack without addressing the chronic deterioration of your pelvic tissue is like putting premium racing fuel into a car with a blown engine. You might get a brief, explosive burst of power, but eventually the internal mechanics are going to fail completely. When a man ignores his baseline lack of response and relies on temporary hacks to get by, he is allowing his pelvic tissue to slowly suffocate during the other 23 hours of the day. Erectile tissue is a use it or lose it biological mechanism. It requires a constant, steady influx of oxygenated blood to remain elastic and healthy. If your natural endothelial function is broken, the tissue is deprived of oxygen. Over time, it begins to undergo a process called apoptosis, programmed cellular death. The elastic, spongy tissue that creates a firm erection is replaced by rigid, non-expansible scar tissue. This leads to physical shrinkage, venous leakage, and a permanent loss of function that no amount of coffee or cloves will ever be able to reverse. Before I reveal the specific, sustained clinical protocol you actually need to repair this damage permanently, I want to ask for your engagement. This level of unvarnished medical truth regarding male vitality is constantly suppressed by algorithms that favor quick fixes and cheap entertainment. If you find value in understanding the actual biology behind your physical performance, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video. And I want to hear from you directly. Tell me in the comments, what is the most bizarre or unusual home remedy you have tried out of sheer desperation to fix your physical decline? Share your experience below. It helps other men realize they are not alone in this frustrating, silent battle. To step away from temporary hacks and actually rehabilitate your physical authority, you must adopt a protocol that permanently repairs the endothelial lining and forces your body to produce its own nitric oxide naturally, around the clock. You need to transition from forcing a temporary spike to rebuilding the biological machinery itself. In my clinical practice, I do not prescribe kitchen spices for severe vascular decay. Instead, I guide my patients toward targeted, highly concentrated natural formulations designed specifically for deep tissue repair. After extensively reviewing the clinical literature, I found a specific combination that addresses this exact mechanism. This targeted formulation utilizes high-yield L-citrulline, an amino acid that serves as the direct biological precursor to nitric oxide. Unlike eugenol, which forces a temporary release, L-citrulline fundamentally rebuilds your body's capacity to generate nitric oxide continuously. It pairs this with standardized maritime pine bark extract, a clinical-grade botanical that physically repairs the endothelial lining, reversing the oxidative damage and restoring the youthful elasticity of your blood vessels. This combination does not just give you a 5-minute spike. It restores your baseline, returning your spontaneous morning firmness and your total physical confidence by healing the root cause of the vascular failure. I have placed the direct link to this exact, heavily researched formulation in the pinned comment immediately below this video. I strongly urge you to click through, read the clinical science validating these ingredients, and understand how they work to rebuild the pathways we discussed today. Do not settle for temporary fixes while your body slowly deteriorates. The sudden, intense reaction to a clove in your coffee is proof that your vascular system is still capable of responding. The tissue is not dead yet. It is simply waiting for the correct, sustained biological support to heal. Stop relying on half measures and start treating your physical independence with the clinical seriousness it deserves. Review the formulation in the pinned comment, take decisive action to protect your vascular integrity, and reclaim your masculine vitality before the damage becomes irreversible. Thank you for your focus and your commitment to your health. I will see you in our next session.